Hey everybody, welcome back to Mystifying Miracles. I always search out the true stories every week and they always have one miracle in them. So if you like true stories, some that are mysterious, unexplained, but they always end on a good note, follow along and we are going to dive right in. Our story begins. It's a bright, sunny afternoon and 6 high school buddies get together to set out to climb Mount Jefferson, and that was located in the Oregon Cascades. Now, the summit of that mountain was 10,495 feet, and the whole party of the 6 boys, they were Jonah, Billy, Chris, Dan, Jake, and Ben. That morning, Eric wasn't feeling well, so he decided to just stay behind to be safe because he just wasn't feeling up to it. The other boys, all of them were 18 years old, with the exception of Ben, who was 17. And this was supposed to be their one last hurrah, basically, before they all left and parted ways for colleges. They had just graduated, so they were ecstatic about this. Good to note, as the story noted, when you're young and you're thriving, you know, life is just exciting and you just don't think as much about problems or bad things that could occur, if that makes sense. Sometimes youngins do, but not very many. Let's just put it that way. And that July day, it was about 3 p.m. when the boys got about at the 400-foot level or part of the summit. And they were ecstatic because they were like, we are almost to the top. And they wanted to be able to see, you know, all the other possible mountains, such as Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, Mount Adams, and maybe even Mount Shasta, way off in the distance. So they were like, this is going to be great. But unfortunately, something terrifying, of course, would befall them. And they weren't going to get that chance. You see, as they were climbing, Chris had accidentally dislodged a huge rock and it went crashing down behind him. And you see, Jonah, he was about 10 yards down that way. And he looked up and he heard Chris because Chris yelled a warning because, I mean, it was an accident and there it goes so fast. And Jonah was able to jump out of the way, but when he did so, he lost his balance. And Jonah began to roll down that steep incline. It said the boulder was following like right behind him. So he must have jumped, but the way he jumped, he was still in front of the big boulder. So now both him and the boulder are rolling down the steep incline. Well, about 3/4 of the way down, that huge rock, it grazed his head. And in doing so, it knocked him unconscious. And immediately from above, Chris screams, "No, I killed my friend." Because he knew it was his fault that the rock was dislodged. And it was then that Chris just immediately starts sliding down the steep incline to get to his friend as quick as he can. And at the time, as Chris is sliding down, he didn't realize that Jonah had actually fallen over 900 feet. And the afternoon light from the sun was fading, and it was starting to fade pretty fast about the time that Chris is sliding down to get back to Jonah. And Jonah, he's just laying at the bottom of a deep ravine, it said, that was kind of creasing the side of the mountain. Now, if you think about it, people die all the time from falling off step ladders or bigger ladders or falling off a bicycle, you name it. It happens all the time. But technically, a fall from 90 feet, that is usually fatal, okay? 90 feet. So how did Jonah live after falling over 900 feet? Well, Chris he was able to slide all the way down, and he was able to stop himself just inches from the edge where Jonah went over and fell into the ravine. Chris slowly started kind of getting down. It said it was a bunch of shale rocks. So he starts slowly trying to get down to his friend. And that, as he's going, he hears a moan. And that excites Chris because Chris thought his friend was dead. But this meant he's still alive. Well, all the rest of the boys in their group finally made it down to the same area, and they all just stood there looking in shock, like, what just happened? Jonah was laying there, of course, unconscious. His face was all bloody. It was just a mess. And it said his left arm had snapped like a matchstick. And after a quick chat amongst the boys, they decided that Jake and Chris would go back to camp to try to get help, while Ben, Dan, and Billy would stay there with Jonah. Well, temperatures are dropping because the sun is now almost set. And the boys, see, they were there for a climb and it was a July day, right? So they all had shorts on and little fleece pullovers. So they were worried about freezing to death as the sun goes down. Ben and Dan, they decide to hurry towards camp to grab up a bunch of warm clothes to bring it back to Billy and Jonah. And they were also going to try to grab some food and water as well. Well, while they're gone, in the meantime, Jonah and Billy try to climb back up the steep ravine. And imagine this, Jonah comes to, but his left arm's broken like a matchstick, and his face is all messed up. So it's slow going for the two of the boys. Billy, he happened to be a big wrestler guy. So what he would do, he would get up behind Jonah and help thrust with his back and help push Jonah up as they're climbing up the steep ravine. And they said it was slow and agonizing, but they did it. And it also, to note, they had to use their ice axes as well to even be able to get back up to where they were before. So it's just inch by inch, axe, pull up, push, over and over. And there was one point when Jonah, his axe, when he goes to put it into the ice, it missed. And he started to fall. But the two boys, they grab onto each other, and it says they slid down a snowfield right into the churning water of Milk Creek. Now, while flying into the creek, and remember, it's below freezing now, or get right about there anyway, they end up hitting a rock midstream. And in that, because they're grasped onto each other, when they hit the rock, it kind of busts the boys apart and they lose the grip on each other. Also, in addition, Billy hit his head on a rock. So he's probably kind of, jarred and out of it a bit. And he just sees Jonah getting swept with the waters way up ahead. And he's starting to panic because up ahead is a waterfall. Miraculously, though, Jonah was able to grab hold of like a rock in the water, and he was able to hold on. And he kind of wedged his body like in between this rock, I guess the way it was. And it said that rock was just a few feet from where the waterfall went over. Well, Billy was able to see when that happened. And he just, relief flooded all over him when he saw that, oh gosh, thank you, Jonah caught the rock. He's all right now. So he makes his way. They were able to get to each other at some point in the water and get themselves to, I guess, what would be like a little shore, to dry ground. But the problem was, it's dark, it's cold, and now both of them are soaking wet. In addition, during that whole thing, Jonah has now also injured both of his ankles. So he's got a broken arm now, 2 bad ankles, and his face is still all messed up. And this is about the point Billy starts having doubts. Oh my gosh, are we going to make it out of here? He contemplated, it said, whether they need to stay put or should they walk on. Because if they stay, frostbite is probably almost a sure thing. However, frostbite and losing a limb or two is way better because you're still alive than if they decide to keep on walking and then they fall off another cliff or ravine and then they die. So it's what is the best of the two? I probably would have chosen the frostbite as well. So Billy kind of chats with Jonah and he says, they discuss those options and he says, I think we should just stay put. And that's when it said Jonah kind of mumbled and, they're freezing. So he kind of is like, when he's talking and he goes, what's the matter? You a wimp or something? To which Billy said, no, it's just too dark. We can't see without a light. And we don't have any. Now, also, a side note, in addition to Jonah's ankle injuries, it also said he had a severe concussion. So he wasn't able probably to think fully and clearly. As far as the ankles, it said he shattered his arm with a compound fracture. So that's what was the real injury to his arm. And he had a jagged piece of bone that was piercing through the skin. And then, of course, the 2 fractured ankles with also torn ligaments, which, they didn't know all that at the time. But that was what they were dealing with here, injury-wise. So again, without any light going on, it's just impossible. You can't see. And it was right about then, Billy noticed a faint glow in one of Jonah's pockets. And he asked him, he goes, what's that? And Jonah's, he's all dazed, poor thing. And he's like, oh yeah, that's my flashlight. And I mean, he had just forgotten about it. I would too if I'd have fallen over 900 feet and then got swept away in water and, all that. So and of course the severe concussion. So he just forgot. And what's amazing is he hadn't touched it, but somehow it turned on in that moment. How? I don't know. But it did. So it said that in that moment that Billy knew that was a sign from God. And Jonah, he also took it as a sign. And they said that both the boys thought in that moment, it's almost like God was telling them or sending that flashlight lighting up as a symbol to say, here's some hope. Keep on your way. And that's exactly what the boys did. They used the flashlight to be able to walk on. And at 2:30 in the morning, they stumbled back into their camp. And of course, that's where they awaited rescue. Now, after the ordeal, Jonah says he could not stop talking about God. He constantly gave him thanks and praise because he says, I shouldn't have lived. I just should not have lived through that. But I did, and it wasn't because of luck. He says it was the mercy and the grace of the Lord. And since then, Jonah says he's learned something. He's learned about God's timing, his strength, and his grace. And both he and Billy, he says, we got to a dead end, and there was nowhere to go. Nowhere to go but to God. And he says, and that was enough. Wow, that is just miraculous. I mean, from the 900-foot fall to everything else that took place in this story. And then, in all of these stories, the people that are in them, they always come out of it wiser. You know what I mean? They always learn lessons that they can use for the rest of their lives. So that's another miracle. Let me know what you guys think. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it so, so very much. And I just want to say, just remember to like and subscribe because that really, really does help. I know we always hear everybody say that, but it's true. It's so true. So I just appreciate it so, so very much if you do like and subscribe. And other than that, guys, I will see you guys for the next one. Thank you.